You must remember this, a kiss is just a kiss, a sigh is just a sigh. The fun.
This is SSCC, affiliate of the National Broadcasting Company, broadcasting from Seward, Alaska, on 88.3 AM. Kate Cronkite reporting.
When you hear the chime, it's NBC time. This is Kate Cronkite. For this day in history, reporting from the Seward Senior Center.
That's the tone. Yeah. Time.
This is Kate. Sorry, emergency broadcast. This is Kate Cronkite for this day in history, reporting from Hooverville at the Seward Senior Center with As Time Goes By. But first, Bob Brown has a word from our sponsor, Procter & Gamble. Bob.
Thanks, Kate. Having trouble getting those clothes really clean? Tired of all that extra scrubbing, the chapped hands and the aching back? You need Oxidol by Procter & Gamble. Oxidol suds go right to work in eliminating dirt 25 to 40% faster and washing white clothes 4 to 5 shades whiter than other soaps. Get them white without bleaching with Oxidol. No need to boil your clothes. Get through your laundry chores faster and easier with the cleaning power of Oxidol, and give them that Oxidol sparkle.
Thanks, Bob. Now, for As Time Goes By. Resident author Helen Wasson has been secretive about her upcoming new writing project, but each month she appears even more committed as she leads her aspiring writers group to follow in her footsteps. Of course, she came along in 1924 during the reign of Dame Agatha Christie and her mystery novels. 1924 was also the start of other important things to come, like the first Winter Olympics. Dana?
Hello, I am Dana Rather. Welcome. The Amos and Andy Show debuted in 1926, which was also the year the great Houdini disappeared for good. And SSC's own magical songstress, Santa Levan, was born. Mrs. Levan can be seen on Mondays at the Senior Center singing nostalgic melodies accompanied by her daughter on the piano. Her daughter, Sue McClure, came along in 1951. That was the year that Disney's Cinderella opened in theaters across the U.S. And it was time of musicals and great lyricists, which shaped the musical team. But that's getting ahead of things. Marilyn Monroe was also born in 1926, but Santa kept her voice sharp and alive. Back to you, Kate.
Thanks, Dana. Longtime resident of Seward, Rose McSwain, was seen rounding up her weekly pinochle team last week. Known for volunteering often, she was too busy being born in 1927 to notice pilot Charles Lindbergh, who not only flew across the Atlantic Ocean that year in his plane, but landed the Spirit of St. Louis in Paris, completing the first nonstop flight between New York and Paris. SSCC can state with certainty that Rose never piloted a plane, however.
Early in 1929, an important discovery occurred: penicillin. Summer brought the first Academy Award ceremony in Hollywood, and by fall, the country and the world would experience Black Tuesday, the crash of the U.S. stock market on October 29th, setting into motion the Great Depression. Few would be untouched, and by New Year's Day, 25% of all wage-earning workers were unemployed. In spite of sad times, Lois Schultz entered the world with a smile and a sense of wit. She could be found at the front desk every Tuesday laughing and challenging folks to make her day. Perhaps that's what happened when one was born the same year as Dirty Harry, Clint Eastwood.
Ha ha. It came to the attention of SSCC that Nancy Blair seldom misses a game of bingo, whether at the Senior Center or the American Legion. We have learned why. Nevada legalized gambling, and Las Vegas became a casino city the same year that Nancy was born. And there's apparently a strong connection between the two. Is Nancy a secret gambler? Make up your own minds, folks. Her faithful commitment is valued, however questionable it may be. By 1932, Franklin Delano Roosevelt was elected. And true to American fashion, every negative event was blamed squarely on the president. This time it was outgoing President Herbert Hoover. The center's own shanty town, Hooverville, was a product of the times. Lorraine McCauley might have done a better job of things, perhaps. Born as the country elected its first woman to the Senate, Lorraine has faithfully executed the duties of her various positions at the center for many years. She was recently recognized by the Seward Phoenix Log as Citizen of the Year for her volunteer work around Seward.
Local fitness volunteer Louise Henley Nixon came along in an important year for fitness, it would appear. 1933 saw the end of Prohibition. The sheriff would like to know if Mrs. Nixon is for or against alcohol consumption. Unfortunately, the answer will have to wait as she fled the state and is unreachable at this time. 1934 would welcome George Long to the world, and there isn't much George won't do to help anyone in Seward. 1934 was a big year for law enforcement, and experts are still trying to connect George with some of the events that occurred. Recent bruises are suspicious. Bonnie and Clyde were shot to death in a stolen car, and public enemy number one, John Dillinger, was gunned down in Chicago. Just whose side is George on? Louise, if you're back in town, you better hide.
Next up, the quilting news. But first, a word from Bob Brown for our sponsor, Oxidol.
Procter & Gamble's Oxidol goes right to work in eliminating 25 to 40% faster and washing clothes whiter, 4 to 5 shades whiter than other soaps. Get them white without bleaching with Oxidol. No need to boil your clothes. Get through your laundry chores faster and easier with the cleaning power of Oxidol and give them that Oxidol sparkle. Don't forget to tune in here at 3 p.m. for Oxidol's own Ma for Curtains.
Thanks, Bob. Now for the quilting news. Now watch Joel and the team of committed quilters continue to create stunning handmade quilts under the leadership of Diane Owens, donating them to the center for fundraising. Their current creation is the work of many artists. It's no wonder, since Nell, for example, was born in 1936 into a world of new creations, such as the first edition of Life magazine, which came off the press that year, and Gone with the Wind was first published. Unfortunately, none of the quilts ever appeared in Life, and Nell never finished reading Gone with the Wind. Longtime quilter Judy Christensen was born later in 1944, and that year, the Academy voted Casablanca the Oscar for Best Picture. Play it again, Sam is not Judy's favorite saying, however, and has nothing to do with quilting. Dana?
Returning to events in 1936, Ludi Everett was born that year, and so was Looney Tunes' Porky Pig. Spam Ham was just around the corner. Ludi's been waiting tables at the center for many years. Wages for that job brought 37 cents an hour in 1936, which is still more than the wages at the Senior Center. We can't blame him if he's ready to throw in the towel. Kate?
Thanks, Dana. Most events find Ann Liesel involved. Considering Ann's wizardry around the center, working many different positions, it should be no surprise to learn that she shares 1939 as her birth year with the Wizard of Oz film. Unlike the Scarecrow or the Tin Man, however, Anne has both a brain and a heart. Within a few years, the world would come together to form the United Nations in 1942. It's clear the UN had something to do with Marilyn Sutherland, who was born that year. Marilyn is famous for her tasty desserts, which she uses to bring folks together around the table to talk. Unfortunately, America began rationing coffee that year too, which was bad for Marilyn and her social gatherings.
While the war lingered on in Europe, a future artist was being born in America who would offer her talent for the benefit of Seward one day. Jean Schwaffel joined A Changing World in 1942, and so did volunteer Helga Ramsberger. Correction, 1942. Known as an independent thinker, Helga was born just 2 days after Jimi Hendrix, whom we believe influenced both Jean and Helga directly. As flower children, Helga likes to help with the annual plant sale, and Jean loves to paint flowers on everything. SSCC has determined that in both cases, strange plants have been involved in each of their lives, but they did not inhale like Jimi Hendrix.
Berlin rose to particular fame in 1943 when his song White Christmas won the Oscar for Best Song. That was the year that volunteer Diane Owens came along to lead the quilt projects from beginning to end. SSCC is investigating whether or not Diane sings while she quilts. On a lighter note, no pun intended, Mary Huss also claims 1943 is her birth year. That year, the cost for a new house was $3,600, and a new car was $900. Mary would need both if she was going to remain at her front desk post through the years, which she has done.
A recent report reveals that Joe Owens, a former board member of the center and a regular volunteer, was seen exercising with his wife, Diane. When asked if this was true, his only reply was, "Can I buy a fitness card? Anybody in here? Can I buy a fitness card?" Joe came along in a momentous year. 1945 brought victory in Europe. Japan surrendered to America, Hitler admitted his defeat, and Mussolini was executed with his mistress. That was also the same year as Yosemite Sam. Now we understand Sam's famous cry, "When I say whoa, I mean whoa!"
Good job, Jenna. 1946 was a favorable year for volunteers Bill Hearn and Stan McKnight. That is the year the bikini was introduced in Paris by a French designer. It's easy to understand why Bill would eventually be the first man to take a long-term position at the front desk. That's where all the women come in. Technology volunteer Gail Lyons was clearly born out of her time, but apparently she knows how to wait. It would be nearly 50 years before anyone would own a personal computer.
As 1946 turned into 1947, Kokla, Fran, and Ole premiered on televisions, as did Meet the Press. The Best Years of Our Lives won the Oscar for Best Picture, and Sandy Schiff made her appearance. Her research skills would prove valuable in keeping track of all the details at the front desk. Unfortunately, Sandy is still working on the cure for the common cold, so she's only available on Thursdays.
In fact, the center has been the recipient of many skilled women. Some entered the workforce as wives during the war years. Others followed in their footsteps during the great baby boom. This changing tide of workers would include Carolyn Pinnock, born in 1948, who took newly elected President Harry S. Truman's word to heart, who said, "America was built on an unbeatable determination to do the job at hand." Carolyn is still trying to figure out how to do everything that needs to be done.
By the middle of 1950, the Korean War was underway, and the following year, in 1951, the city of Paris celebrated its 2000th birthday. That year, Americans heard the shot around the world as third baseman Bobby Thompson hit a grand slam to give the New York Giants the pennant. Seward's own Maureen Sheehan came screaming into the world when she heard the shot and would eventually call out, "B1!" during weekly bingo games. Maureen is quick to assist whenever there is an event. Mountain Man Dave Fredrickson was born that year as well and did not hear the shot. SSC noticed that it takes several calls to get him on the phone.
Liza Schultz claims 1951 as her birth year. Liza's presence as a volunteer erupted with a blast as she began doing many tasks all at the same time. Clearly, she was influenced by another big event in 1951, the first atomic detonation at a Nevada site.
In 1952 began with the crowning of Elizabeth as Queen of England, and before the year ended, Hound Dog was recorded by Big Mama Thornton.
Take it away, Dan.
America's stock market had recovered from the crash and things were looking up. The next year would welcome Jody Tuck. As a volunteer, Jody's involved in many ways like teaching origami, leading a bowling team, and assisting with bingo. SSCC wanted to know what kind of year would shape Jody into a go-getter that she is. Our research showed that Jody was born in 1953, the same year the first Corvette was built. Full speed ahead, Jody!
But on a more serious note, children received the first polio vaccine at the start of 1954. That was the year that Chef Susan's husband, John, entered the world. His contribution was not nearly as important, but his gravy is becoming famous. With his cooking skills, any woman would want him around, just like the famous song released in his birth year, Earth Angel.
Earth Angel, will you be mine, my darling dear, love you all the time.
John Hall was also born that year and would come to be known as the Sweeper. Not surprising, however, since 1954 had a lot of vacuum cleaner salesmen going door to door. Denzel Washington was also born in 1954 but has never volunteered. 1958 saw a gallon of gas cost 24 cents. And foot care volunteer Diane Hunt started driving. She was born in the increasingly mobile and prosperous period. Barbecue cattle cook Mike Little joined the world the next year, just as Rawhide debuted with Clint Eastwood.
Baby boomers born between 1946 and 1964 grew up after the golden era of radio. Most families had TV at home and a big Buick in the driveway. The suburbs became a world where wall ovens could be found and rock and roll music was drowning out the horns of the big band era. Men grew their hair long and illegal drugs found a place in society. 9 board members born between 1940 and 1960s kept the center running smoothly, bringing over 550 years of experience to the job. This board was there when Bugs Bunny was born, the first Tupperware and the first microwave oven entered kitchens, and experienced the invention of Velcro and the Frisbee. They grew up on the music of Judy Garland, Dinah Shore, Frank Sinatra, Elvis Presley, and the Beatles.
America went to war again, this time in Vietnam. Movies like MASH and 5 Easy Pieces showed changing culture on the big screen. Woodstock left its music mark on the changing world. This was a time of bell-bottoms and disco, hot pants and miniskirts. 1973 witnessed Secretariat winning the Triple Crown, and volunteer Laura Hughes was born. Laura would be shaped by all the events unfolding in her generation, like the movie American Graffiti, which premiered that year showcasing the fast cars and party lifestyle of the new generation of young soldiers and voters. SSCC has learned that Laura no longer drives a fast car and has stopped partying. The next year would bring Watergate and the resignation of President Nixon in 1974.
Hollywood was making its mark in the early 1980s, and Back to the Future and The Shining topped the list of movies, as did Caddyshack and Ghostbusters. And the band Queen recorded Another One Bites the Dust. 1984 frowned over the resignation of Miss America, Vanessa Williams, for posing nude in Penthouse magazine. Kitchen volunteer David Miller was born, and just 6 years later the World Wide Web began and transformed the globe. Elena, David's wife, was born in 1984. The same year, Oprah went national.
Those who were born in the 30s to the 60s are the last generations who played in the street. You're the ones that walked over a mile a day to school. You played hide and seek outside at night with no worries or fear of anything bad happening. You're the first generation who played video games. And you're the last to record songs off the radio onto a cassette tape. You're the generation of Tom and Jerry, Looney Tunes, and Captain Kangaroo. You traveled in carriages and later in cars without seatbelts. You lived without a cell phone. You did not have a fax machine or a flat screen TV, an iPod, nor did you communicate via Facebook and Twitter. And through it all, you had a great time. So, what sort of era was it? It was an era, like all eras, filled with those events that alter and illuminate our times. And you were there. And that's the way it was. February 25th, 2015. This is Kate Cronkite. Good night.
Thank you all for coming. As I say for the past 15 years, we at least can give you 20 minutes of entertainment after you have given us hundreds of hours of entertainment throughout the year. There are too many names to thank and honor properly. Friends who have shown their value of the center by supporting it and volunteering here. Learning about all life changes that have influenced each and every one of us and made us who we are today should remind us of the great diversity of volunteers that we are blessed to have. I'd like to thank Kathy, Mike, Susan, our staff here. I applaud them and say many thanks for their dedication and commitment to making the Senior Center what it is today. And we each benefit from their many characteristics that history has added to our individual personalities here at the Senior Center. Could you please stand? My staff. I'd also like to thank our cameraman, Wolf Kurtz over here, running our cameras today. He's also a volunteer Meals on Wheels driver. You might recognize his face from last summer. He ran the hot seat for 3 months until Kathy could come back on staff starting in September. And then thank you to Ron Nitz for his performance as Bob Brown, our commercial spokesman. But last but not least, I definitely want to recognize Kathy again this afternoon She wrote, produced, and directed this event this year, so that was a big heavy off my plate this year, and again, she's gone above and beyond her. But before we close our event today, we definitely want to recognize one of our newest, youngest volunteers who's in the crowd today, and it's a special day because it's his birthday. So please join us in a round of birthday song to Sam Melvin. He's the young chap over here in the purple hat. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Sam. Happy birthday to you. We could not have timed that any better, Sam. Thank you again, everyone, for coming and filling the house, and we so appreciate you, and you are the best piece of this agency. Thank you, and enjoy your dessert provided by Beth Johnson. Yeah. Sorry, real quick, I skipped part of my little special piece. I don't need my script. So I do. I have one other person in the audience to recognize today. She was here when I started 15 years ago. I think she was here 20 years before I was here 15 years ago. This year, she was recognized as Citizen of the Year with the Seward Phoenix Law. We'd like to recognize her as Volunteer of the Year, which we've never done here, so make it a first. Lorraine McCauley, please come on up. And once and for all, Lorraine McCauley is speechless. Have a good afternoon.
You must remember this. A kiss is just a kiss. A sigh is just a sigh. The fundamental things apply as time